All right, ready for a deep dive. Today we're looking into the life of Mike Tyson, one of boxing's most captivating and controversial figures. We'll be using excerpts from his autobiography, Undisputed Truth, a book that, well, it really doesn't hold back. Raw and honest portrayal of his journey.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, to have this personal account, hear his stories straight from him, like a window into the mind of a man who has been both, well, fascinating and repelling the public for decades.
Absolutely. You hear people say, can't judge a man until you walk a mile in his shoes. Well, this deep dive, we get to kind of do that. Metaphorically, of course. So we'll look at his rough childhood, his huge rise to fame, and the struggles that, well, plagued him even when he was at his peak. What do you think we can really learn about someone when we hear their own story?
Oh, that's a great question. It's really the core of biography as a genre. You might think you're getting the whole truth, the unvarnished truth. But even with the best intentions, memory is, well, tricky. It's influenced by emotions, by time, by how we shape our own stories. So Tyson's book offers incredible insights, but it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle.
Okay, so let's unpack this puzzle. Let's start with his early life. Tyson doesn't try to hide anything about his childhood in Brownsville. It's a very, very stark portrait of poverty, violence, and just this constant fight for survival. Imagine being so young and already feeling like you have to fight just to exist.
And not just surviving, but, trying to find opportunity where there doesn't seem to be any. He talks about being sent to a special ed school, and not because he had learning problems, but because he was already involved in criminal activity, as a kid. Really highlights how his environment shaped those early choices.
It almost makes you think, was boxing his escape? A way to channel all that anger and energy
Yeah.
into something positive?
Maybe. But then comes Customato, his trainer and mentor, the one who really changed his life, almost like a hero's journey, right? The wise old sage who sees potential when everyone else sees trouble.
Yeah, and D'Amato wasn't just teaching jabs and hooks. He used, unconventional methods. Hypnosis, affirmations to mold not just Tyson's fighting style, but his whole mindset.
Think about it. Young Tyson lying there, being put into this hypnotic state, D'Amato planting these powerful beliefs, you will be the greatest, blending physical and psychological training. And it seemed to really work.
It's like he tapped into something primal, fueling that fire. Discipline and belief all mixed together. And it wasn't just D'Amato. Tyson talks about being inspired by guys like Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, especially their courage and their arrogance. Why do you think he was drawn to that?
That is interesting. Remember, Tyson came from a world where, well, you had to fight for everything. Weakness made you a target. So arrogance, for him, wasn't just ego. It was like a shield, a way to look strong, invincible, even when maybe he didn't feel that way inside.
So he's creating this persona, this almost mythical image to protect himself.
Exactly. He saw arrogance as survival, a way to deal with the tough reality he'd always known.
Which leads us to his quick rise in boxing. D'Amato's training, his own drive, he became the youngest heavyweight champ ever. But even with all that success, there were cracks.
Yeah, and that's what makes this part so interesting. He talks about feeling like a fake, forced to present this polished image that clashed with his roots. Like he was stuck between two worlds, trying to reconcile his past with his new fame.
He even mentions feeling like uneasy about the attention, the praise.
Yeah.
Kind of surprising for someone who had achieved so much.
It speaks to the complexity of who he is. Chasing greatness, but also feeling unworthy. Maybe he thought he didn't deserve the success, or maybe he was scared it could all disappear.
So even as he's conquering the boxing world, he's fighting these internal demons, these conflicting identities.
Exactly. And those internal struggles would soon, spill over, leading to some of the biggest controversies in his career. His relationships, especially his marriage to Robin Givens, became, tabloid fodder. He talks about feeling manipulated, controlled, and then the accusations of violence started overshadowing what he did in the ring.
Yeah, it's almost like his personal life, it mirrored his fighting style. Yeah. Explosive, unpredictable, and ultimately, destructive.
That's a good point. We got to remember, Tyson's early life, it was full of violence, betrayal. Those things, they shape how you react when things get tough emotionally. He probably didn't have many healthy ways to cope.
He even tells this story about visiting his mom in Brooklyn right after winning the championship. He's bragging, saying he's the greatest. And her response, "There's always someone better, son," really brings him back down to earth.
Wow. That's powerful. It shows the difference between how he acted and how he felt inside. On one hand, he's aiming for this impossible level of dominance, but deep down, he's still that kid from Brownsville, afraid of failing, haunted by his past.
Kind of sad when you think about it. You can almost sense that need for validation. Even when he's achieving things most people can only dream of.
Right. And as his fame grew, so did the chaos around him. He talks about the entourage, the yes men, the endless stream of women, parties, drugs, bad decisions. It's like he was drawn to that frenzy, like it
That
somehow proved his worth.
makes you wonder, what if he had a better support system? People who actually cared about him, not just his fame and money.
He did have some interesting encounters, like his meeting with Iceberg Slim, the former pimp who became an author. Tyson even says if he had met Iceberg before marrying Robin Givens, things might have been different.
Wow, that's a wild pairing. The baddest man on the planet getting advice from a former pimp. What kind of wisdom did Iceberg share?
Well, according to Tyson, Iceberg warned him about the traps of fame, how some women could be manipulative. He even gave him tips on, well, handling groupies, staying in control.
So it's like Iceberg was like teaching him the game, just in a different arena. It shows the kind of guidance Tyson was looking for, even if it came from, well, unconventional sources.
He did seem drawn to strong personalities, even outside of boxing, people who could offer a fresh perspective on fame and fortune.
But even with all the craziness, Tyson was still winning. His knockout power was legendary. He was becoming a global icon.
He was unstoppable in the ring. He describes wanting to break his opponent's will, to rip out their heart and show it to them. Brutal, almost animalistic.
And that aggression wasn't just in the ring. The street fight with Mitch Green, the incident with the parking attendant, it all added to this image of him as this volatile, unpredictable figure. The media loved it.
Yeah. And those incidents, they started to overshadow his actual achievements. He went from boxing prodigy to troubled champion. People saw him differently. They were, well, fascinated and scared at the same time.
And then the fall. The rape conviction. Prison. It was a major turning point, personally and professionally. Forced him to face his demons in a way he never had before.
Prison was, well, it was brutal. But maybe it was what he needed. He lost everything. Fame, fortune, everything.
He describes it as dehumanizing. But he also found some peace, reading, connecting with his spirituality.
It's in those vulnerable moments that you see him start to understand, to realize that his actions had real consequences. He talks about connecting with other inmates, sharing what little he had, finding strength in unexpected places.
There's this one story that really stands out. He meets another inmate who basically challenges him, tells him to get back in shape, start fighting again. It's like this guy saw something in Tyson that Tyson himself had lost.
Yeah. Shows the resilience of the human spirit, that even in the worst situations, there's potential for change, for redemption. It's a theme throughout his whole story, this back and forth between self-destruction and the desire for something more.
He gets out of prison, a changed man. Or at least that's the hope. He goes back to boxing. But getting back to the top, it's a tough road.
It's that, classic comeback story. But with Tyson's, well, brutal honesty, he's still fighting addiction, still dealing with his past, and the pressure to be the champ again, huge.
He's trying to find his place in this new world. Not the undisputed champ anymore. More like, well, a figure carrying the weight of everything he's done.
And he's looking for something more than just winning fights. There's this moment, he's in Mexico, sees all these kids living in poverty, and he's really struck by it. Their resilience, how happy they are with so little.
It's like that trip woke something up in him. Compassion, a need to connect with something bigger.
It's those moments, those glimpses of vulnerability, self-awareness that make his story so powerful. You see the fighter, the celebrity, but also the man who's trying to redeem himself.
But those demons, they don't just disappear, do they? The ear-biting incident with Holyfield shocked everyone, really cemented his image as the bad guy.
That incident, more than anything else, tarnished his legacy, made people question if he was, mentally stable.
He says he was in a daze during that fight. Rage and frustration. Doesn't even remember biting Holyfield. It's scary and disturbing.
Makes you wonder about, his accountability. Could he really control himself, even after trying to change?
Even as he keeps fighting, the trouble never seems to go away. Money problems, legal issues. The media is always watching. It's a crazy ride, even for someone like Mike Tyson.
But there's this constant searching, wanting something more than the fame and money. He tries different things. Islam, Buddhism, looking for answers.
It's like he's trying to find some peace, to bring together all these different sides of himself. The fighter, the person who's done wrong, the man looking for redemption.
He talks about his relationships with women, admits to cheating, to the pain he caused. There's regret there, a desire to understand, well, why he did the things he did.
And his current marriage seems to be a good thing. Stable, supportive, maybe a sign that he's found a way to have some lasting peace.
We got to remember, though, this is just one side of the story, his truth. The book gives us this amazing look into the mind of, well, a complicated guy, full of contradictions. But it also leaves us with a lot of questions.
Makes you think. Can you ever really know another person? Especially someone who's lived their life in the public eye.
That's the big question, isn't it? We've heard Tyson's version. The good, the bad, the victories, the defeats. But is it the whole story?
He's incredibly honest about his flaws, his mistakes. He doesn't hide from the dark parts of himself. But you always wonder, is there more?
And that's the problem with any autobiography. Even one as, well, raw as this, it's all seen through the author's eyes, their memories.
So where does that leave us? What can we take away from this deep dive into Mike Tyson's life, told in his own words?
I think it reminds us that even the biggest icons, they're human, with all the good and bad that comes with that. We've seen the fighter, the champion, the trolled guy, the man looking for redemption. It's not a simple story, a life full of incredible highs and terrible lows.
It reminds us to see biography, not as finding all the answers, but as exploring what it means to be human. All the messiness, the unpredictability.
To listen with empathy, to recognize the power of people's stories, and to know that there's always more to the story than we might see at first.
So next time you hear about some big celebrity, whether it's in the news or a movie, remember there's a whole story behind that persona, a life lived, a truth waiting to be discovered. And you might just find that the most captivating stories are often the ones we least expect.